Today, we're looking at the final chapter in our series. So, we've been going through my 9950 X on my Mag Tomahawk X670E motherboard and testing out all sorts of EXPO and XMP kits. And today is probably going to be our final chapter on this one because ultimately I got to pick a kit and leave it in this computer, give it back to my wife. But we're going to be taking a look at the 32 gig DDR5 6000 CL28 1.4 volt kit out from G.SKILL, and these were selling out pretty quick. So the only ones I could get were the Trident Z5 Royals. So it's got the bling on there, and I'll tell you right now, right out of the box, her old DDR4 computer had the Royal in it, and she loved that RAM. She was like, "It's just for me. I'm the princess. I got this RAM." When DDR5 came out and upgraded her rig, they didn't make Royal kits initially. And she was like, "What do you mean that my computer's not going to have my Royal RAM in it?" And I was like, "Dude, trust me, you're going to want the DDR5. The system's going to be so much better. I'm going to get you a 9950X. It's going to be amazing." Uh, well, now the Royal's finally out, and she's like, "Well, that's what's staying in my computer, right?" And I was like, "Well, it's only 32 gigs. Your computer's kind of more of a workstation. We should probably, throw the 64 gig kit in there." But I don't know. We'll have to see how we fall out on that battle. But we're going to be looking at the DDR5 6000 today with that lower latency CL28. And I think this is the one that a lot of people have been waiting to look at because, 6000 CL30 has been the breadwinner or just like the standard for a long time. So now they're starting to get kits that are bend a little bit better, and they're getting them out with, lower latency right off the bat. So what was pretty funny is when I first installed this kit, I was having several problems because I went straight from the 6400 to the 6000, and I'm pretty sure that they're the exact same kit. It's just what EXPO's loading in them, and we'll take a look at that. So this is pretty hilarious and almost put me into a panic. I put my video out a couple of days ago on the new G.SKILL 6400 CL30 kits, and I had a lot of people asking me about the 6000 CL28, and I told them like, "Hey, I've got a kit in the mail." And unfortunately, the snowstorm prevented it arriving on time. So I'm in a little bit of a time crunch now because I got to get back to work here soon, and I wanted to get the info out on the 6000 CL28 and the MSI BIOS. When I loaded up the BIOS, I hit Expo disabled, Expo enabled to kind of get it to reread like, "Hey, the Expo." And because I went straight from one kit that was G.SKILL 6400 CL30 to the other kit, it would not read the actual Expo profile, I guess. And I've had like some suspicions that these sticks are like almost identical. It's just what settings they load up in the Expo. And when I would go into the BIOS, you can look and see what's loaded on that stick of RAM. And when I looked in there, it told me it was 6400 CL30, and I thought I was losing my mind. And at first I go back and I check my Amazon order, and like, sure enough, I ordered 6000 CL28. And then I was like, well, maybe just the wrong one got sent. So I looked in the side of the case, and sure enough, sticker right there on the side of the RAM says 6000 CL28. But I could not get my BIOS to read it. It just thought it was the same kit that was already in there because I went straight from one to the other. So if you look at this, I reset factory defaults, restarted, then re-enabled Expo, and it's still just giving me 6400 CL30. But then if you come in here to CPU Z, I do have the correct kit because it tells me right here that the Expo is the 6000 CL28. So this is kind of a funny occurrence that put me in a little bit of a panic, but I got to go figure out how to force this thing, how to like be like, "No, this is not the same kit. Reread the Expo settings off of there, dude," because this motherboard just wants to keep giving me the 6400, and I want to get this kit tested while I still can. I won't have time to tune it before I got to start the new work week, and I'm traveling around a bit and stuff, but I'll be able to at least get the factory settings out so you can see it compared to the other Expo kits I've ran. But I'm going to get back to troubleshooting, and hopefully I'll have the results here soon. So this is what I'm talking about. This is hilarious. If you come down in here, so we've got Expo enabled. So I have seen when you switch kits out, sometimes it'll have a little bit of problem. If you disable it and re-enable it, it usually comes through. 6400 CL30, still saying it. Okay, and what's so funny about this is I have memory change detected. So when I switch out the memory, it should announce on post like, hey, you've got a different kit. Uh, you need to go into BIOS and set it up. Cool. And then we just saw in CPU Z that it properly recognized it. But this is still loading this up as the 6400 J30 kit, which is the one I had in it previously. So the only thing I can think of, I'm going to just throw a completely different kit in there so it recognizes that it changed, and then I'm going to change it back. But I just think it's hilarious that these kits are so close to the same that the BIOS can't detect and just won't even load or recheck on what its Expo profile is. So I haven't ran into this one before. Maybe I'm just being a noob, but I just thought this was kind of a funny little occurrence. But I'll figure out how to get it fixed and we'll get this performance tested. Okay, yeah. So apparently, if that worked, those kits were just so close to each other that I couldn't recognize they changed. And I don't know if there's a way to like force it to read because when I went into that memory settings, it was still showing the old Expo settings in there. But I went ahead and put an XMP kit in just to make sure, like, hey, you're going to realize that this is changing. And then when I went back to the Expo kit, uh, the G.SKILL Royals that I'm trying to test, switching it from Expo to an XMP kit and then back to an Expo kit, it finally read and recognized like, hey, the memory has changed. So sure enough, here it's loaded 6000 CL28. And then I did such a bunch of messing around in the BIOS. Let me make sure that nothing else is screwed up. Um, I just always set these manually just in case. And since we're the 6000, I'm just going to run it at the 2000 F clock because I think that's pretty normal setup. And that should do it. Let's get in here and try it out. All right, so let's take a look at the performance here and I'll shrink myself out of the way. I will say this kit, there was several funny things that occurred, and I'll talk through some of them and where I think where we're at. So if we take a look at this, for the AIDA64 info, the 8000, it's always going to be the king of bandwidths. That's what we got up here. And then it actually put up pretty decent latency. The 6400 CL32, that was my 64 gig kit. It was kind of next in line, a little bit lower latency, good bandwidth. And then we have our two Expo kits that we're looking at today. And this is going to be our 6400 CL30 and then our 6000 CL28. And the 6400 just it's going to have wider bandwidth, but what I thought was interesting is in AIDA, and I ran this several times, the latency was actually coming back worse on the CL28. And I don't know if that's just something weird with the way AIDA 64 was reading it, because I do know this latency test is not really perfect on these. Or if it was just maybe some of the other subtimings in there. But it was actually coming back worse on the latency on the CL28 than my CL30 kit. So that was kind of interesting to me. But neither one of these are tuned. These are both the Expo profiles, and that's kind of how those numbers fell out. For our Cinebench R24, so we came out 2440 on this kit with 6000 CL28. I don't think this is really surprising. A lot of the synthetic and just the CPU centric benchmarks really do well with added frequency. So we're falling out. I actually got the wrong one color coded here. This is the 64 gig kit, which I think the dual rank just did really good on this test. What we got here is this is our 6400 CL30 Expo kit, and this is our 6000 CL28 Expo kit. So you can see, I mean, damn near almost within a margin of error. We're 2456 versus 2440. And the total spread here between all of them is only about 150 points. But, that's something, especially on the R24 squish. The points have gotten so much closer together. But you can see our two kits are pretty competitive here. And most of the synthetics are going to favor the frequency. So the 6400 CL30 has been coming out on top so far. Then we come up to our Time Spy Extreme. So the 6000, here we go. CL28 taking 14901 on the CPU score, besting out the 6400 CL30 at 14868. Both of these absolutely destroying the 6000 CL30. So as you can see here, you got to pick a lane. You either have to push for frequency or you got to push for more aggressive latency. But either one of those is going to post a big win over the traditional 6000 CL30. For Counter-Strike 2, this is where they're going to come in, and the frequency here edging them out. So we're about 13 FPS higher on average, and the bigger, more important part is about 12 FPS on average higher than the 6000 CL28. So the 6400 CL30 coming out on top here, and then the other kits we've reviewed in the past demonstrated below. On Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail, 6400 CL30 just barely edging out the 6000 CL28. And then on Total War, I think this game, I don't know what was going on. I ran it a couple of times, but the 6000 CL28 was actually doing worse. So I don't know if there's something particular on this kit or what it was, but I would almost have this as a throwaway. And this is kind of like a ringer game I got in here anyway to represent Sims. But it did score bottom of the pack here for one reason or another, even below the 6000 CL30. So that doesn't really make sense to me, but I included it in there because the score is the score. That's what I was getting on it, and it is what it is. So after looking at this whole thing, what are my conclusions? I'll be honest with you. I think that the two kits, the 6400 CL30 and the 6000 CL28, I think when G.SKILL's going through and they're picking out and binning parts, they're like, this one passes certain QA results, it's going in this pile. This one doesn't pass, it's going in that pile, and they divvy them all up. I'll be honest with you, I think that these are so on par with being the exact same bin, and there's no way to really prove that, I guess, and this is just conjecture on my part. But I think the 6400 CL30 and the 6000 CL28 are like almost identical parts. It's just, they just load the preset on the stick that passes their QA to load that preset. So I think that they just took them probably down the middle and said like, hey, these are going to go 6400 and these are going to go 6000. And I think that's smart because, from the consumer side, a lot of people are just sold that 6000 is the end all be all and they're just going to continue to buy it. So how do you get more performance? You got to lower the latency down. I think in practical gaming that it works because when you do the math, like 6400 CL32 is the same practical latency as 6000 CL30. So I'm assuming that probably 6400 CL30 is the same as 6000 CL28. I haven't done the math, but some games are going to prefer a little bit of frequency and some games are going to prefer the lower latency. But it seemed like through a lot of these tests, generally the 6400 kits won. A lot of the gaming, they were like dead even. Counter-Strike, the 6400 took it pretty good. I think that the latency, and I would have to do more testing, I think there's diminishing returns on like you can continue to lower and lower and lower latency, but increasing frequency with a very good latency, I think is going to be my strategy personally. Um, I didn't include the numbers in these ones, but my 6400 kit, I was able to tune it down to CL 28. And I haven't had time because I just got this kit in today. It was delayed because of the snowstorm. But the 6000 CL28, I guarantee you I could tune it down to 6000 CL26. And I think we would endlessly continue to do this dance of like, well, I can get the latency a little lower, and it's like, well, I can get the frequency a little higher. I really think it's tomato, but I do think that across a wide berth of applications, having a little bit extra frequency is nice than just completely committing to 6000 and just trying to lower the latency. I think 6400 CL28 is going to be my strategy on most computers from here on in. Um, and I think that these kits make it very, very easy. And the good news is you can tune either of these kits. So I would almost say that for the purchase, these kits are almost completely interchangeable. If you just want to run EXPO, you got to choose one or the other. But I guarantee I could put either one of these kits in, and I could take both of them to 6000 CL26, or I could take both of them to 6400 CL28. I guarantee you I could do it the same on both of them. Now, there is the problem of not all motherboard or not all CPU memory controllers can run 6400. Apparently, I've been very lucky. I've been able to um, have a very high success rate on 6400. And I think it's telling that, they're willing to make 6400 Expo profiles because they're saying, like, hey, this is an Expo profile. This is designed to run on your AMD processor, and it's 6400 CL30. So that's telling. I think there's a pretty good success rate, but I still run into people that say they can't do it. So you can look at this one of two ways. You can get the 6400 kit, and if your CPU can't run it, you can back it down to 62, and then you can tighten up the timings. But that's going to require you to do some tuning. You can get the 6000 CL28, and I guarantee you any AM5 processor is going to run the 6000, and the 6000 CL28 is going to be right on par or even potentially winning in some games. So I would say the safe bet is to get the 6000 CL28 because I guarantee you that's going to work on an AM5, and it's already got the tighter latency. Um, and there's no scenario where you're going to have to tune it. It's just going to work. The 6400 CL30, I think it's the same exact kit. It's just what they've loaded on it. And I think there's a really good chance it's going to work for you. And you get that a little bit additional frequency. Worst case scenario, you got to tune it a little bit. So the choice is ultimately up to you. I like tinkering with these things, so I'm probably going to continue to push for 6400. But I think the 6000 CL28 is a super safe bet that's going to squeak out some more performance than what we've been seeing. Because you can tell right here in Counter-Strike, you know, uh, over the traditional 6000 CL30, you've got a jump in 5 FPS in the 1% lows and 12% in the or 12 FPS in the average. And that's not huge, but when you got to buy a RAM kit anyway, and the 6000 CL30, I know you can get them as cheap as like $80, but the G.SKILL one's going to be like 100, $110, and then this kit's going to be like 120, $130. To me, for the 20 extra dollars, like, yeah, sure, I'll take the extra 10 frames. Why not? And that's obviously exploded up because Counter-Strike's getting 500 frames, so 10 frames is like nothing. If you're playing something where you're getting 60 frames, the difference is probably going to be like 1 FPS. But still, for $20 to get that little bit extra, um, it's like, why not? Now, if you're absolutely budget constrained, then sure, go with this 6000 CL30. But ultimately, my conclusion between this kit and the 6400 CL30 and the 6000 CL28, same conclusion. G.SKILL, nice bins. You're paying about $20 extra to get a nicer bin. They've both got great performance out of the box. when I went to tune the 6400, it just took less voltage to get to the same settings I've had in other kits, which makes sense. When you've got a nicer bend item, it takes less voltage to get the same speed. So I've done 6400 CL28 on other kits, and it's taken a lot more voltage. I was able to get the 6D400 CL28 on this EXPO kit at like 1.45 volts. So that's excellent. That's a great daily driver rig. Um, and then ultimately, because this video is about the 6000 CL28, I think it's the same kit, just different profiles. So why would you buy this one over the 6400? I think it's just if you want to be on the safe side, maybe you think just from experience you've had with your processor in the past, you think you have a little bit of a weaker IMC. Um, that's a great reason to go with this kit. If you just absolutely under no circumstance want to have to do any manual settings, that would be a great reason to go with this kit. But ultimately, the point of buying these higher bin kits is so that you can tune them and that you can, get more performance and not necessarily have to crank the voltage up so high. That's really where the nice bins come in. So uh, it's up to you. I think it's a great option for anybody that wants to tune. If you plan on tuning, I think either kit wins. Just buy the one that's in stock at the cheapest price. If they got the 6400 CL30 and the just the regular Neo, and then they only got the other one in Royal, and you don't care about the bling, buy the cheaper one and just end up tuning it. That'd be my scenario. But either way, I think these are both absolutely great products. Um, and I don't think you can lose either direction. But if you like the content, give me a like. If you got any other opinions, go ahead and leave a comment below, and definitely hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching today.